This is disc number 4.
We vacillate between spoiling ourselves and punishing ourselves. It helps to identify the inner critic as an outside voice with impossible standards, to realize it's not the voice of God, and to learn gradually to ignore it. The battle between the inner critic and the timid defender reminds me of the Three Stooges, those masters of self-destructive behavior. We have Moe, the critic, slapping us around for the slightest mistake. Larry, the timid defender, whining excuses. Curly, the id in this metaphor, is the one who feels, who acts impulsively, and gets us in trouble in the first place. The conscious self is distracted, and nobody's left in charge. This is all a battle within the automatic self, so absorbing that the conscious self has gone AWOL. There's no part left of our minds to step back and see that all this is crazy. We're in an airplane with no one at the controls. The plane is yawing and swooping all over the sky, never getting anywhere and always in danger of crashing. We need a wise, calm, resourceful pilot to step in and take control. Yet we need to find this person within ourselves. That's where mindfulness comes in. Back to anger. Anger is difficult. Sometimes it's the best friend we have. But in today's world, there are all kinds of constraints, many useful, against expressing it directly. Many of us learned in childhood that anger is bad. Our parents punished us, withdrew from us, or laid a guilt trip on us when we got angry. We tried not to feel that way, but you can't not feel a normal reaction. So anger becomes associated with a state of discomfort, with guilt and shame. Using defenses to avoid or control these troubling feelings is merely human. If you bite back on anger too often, or distort your world so you can deny it, you're left with unconscious guilt. You may feel an impulse to hurt or desert someone you love, for example. If this is a conscious process, you can try to work on the aspects of the relationship that are getting under your skin. If it's unconscious, you're likely to feel unconscious guilt or shame, a really destructive state of affairs we'll discuss more in Chapter 7. If you do hurt someone you love, and who hasn't, there are other ways defenses can lead to trouble. We might rationalize that we were just too busy to remember the anniversary. But that unconscious guilt, the uncomfortable, vague feeling we get around our loved one, may lead us to avoid him or even blame him. He's just oversensitive. He doesn't realize how busy I am. It's very common for us to avoid people we've hurt, even to begin to blame them for making us feel uncomfortable. It takes a lot of mindfulness practice and practice of other skills to see the effects of misplaced anger within yourself. Learning self-control, as we'll discuss in Chapter 6, will help you feel safer when you're angry, because you know you won't do anything foolish or hurt someone. But if you keep running into conflict with authority, if you feel that people always have hidden agendas, if you blow up at people you love, if you can't meet your own standards, if you feel under pressure all the time, but aren't especially anxious, take a hard look for repressed anger. Then you can practice these 3 strategies to help escape from the self-destructive cycle you're in, and feel a lot better about yourself into the bargain. 1. Prevention. If you're making trouble just because you're bored, do something more important or more fun. If you're making trouble because you resent authority, either take the trouble to understand why the rules are what they are, get out and work for something that lends you self-respect, or cultivate a sense of humor. If you're displacing your anger on people you love, figure out why you're so angry and do something to address the root of the problem. If you have a tough inner critic, take a hard look at how you're judging yourself. Judging is a bad habit that you can stop with practice. If you feel oppressed, ask yourself if it's really because of current circumstances or because it's a feeling you carry around with you. If it is a result of the current situation, start working to change it. If it's because you feel oppressed most of the time, what's that about? You're probably stuffing a lot of anger away and feeling guilty about it, even if it's unconscious at this point. Start letting it out a little at a time, in the most constructive ways you can. Get into therapy. Practice mindfulness and self-control so that your anger is acceptable and not so scary. 2. Assertiveness. Learn how to speak up so that you don't feel so oppressed and disappointed. Learn how to get your feelings and needs across without getting into trouble. Learn how to listen better so that you don't misunderstand what people want of you. If you're stuck dealing with a hopeless situation, start looking around for alternatives. If there are none, use your mindfulness skills to distance yourself. Try out exercise 4 on learning assertiveness. If it's you beating up on yourself, get right back in your own face. That inner critic is just a bullying part of yourself, and you need to see that it doesn't have the power or the authority that you give it. 3. Values clarification. If you're angry because your life is not going the way you want, take a serious, slow look at yourself. Is what you want possible or practical? Maybe your standards are out of sync with reality, and you should change your expectations. Materialistic goals don't lead to happiness. They isolate you and make you jealous and competitive. Happiness comes from efforts to connect with other people, to attain a sense of purpose in life, to deliberately seek joy in your day-to-day experience. And we have to deal with what Freud called the reality principle, as articulated by Mick Jagger. You can't always get what you want. Some disappointments must be accepted. Others can be compensated for in different ways. Feeling cheated or angry because life doesn't meet your unrealistic expectations is a waste of time. What's commonly called assertiveness training is a very good way to help you become more comfortable with accepting and expressing your anger. It starts with a mindful self-examination to make sure your anger is justified and aimed in the right direction. Exercise 4. Practicing assertiveness. Conflict takes many forms. You want something that someone else doesn't want to give you, or vice versa. You may feel you're being taken for granted, not respected, not heard. You may be enjoying a quiet evening, and your wife or adolescent comes in and turns on the television. A small disagreement with your roommate mushrooms into total war. What to do? First, calm yourself down. You can't resolve conflict when your emotions are out of control. The automatic self may want to explode in anger or run away. It may make you cry or freeze or choke up. Wait until these feelings are under control. Use your mindfulness skills. Then, objectively evaluate your rights. What's wrong with this situation? Are you being treated respectfully but not getting your way? Or is there disrespect as well as conflict? You certainly have a right to respectful treatment. And that may be more important than the subject of the conflict itself. We all have basic rights we tend to forget about, including the rights to change our minds, to say, I don't know, and to be treated with dignity and respect. State the problem in terms of how it affects you. Make it clear exactly how you are hurt or inconvenienced by the other person's behavior. When you leave without telling me goodbye, I feel hurt. When you turn on the television, I can't read. When you make dirty jokes in the office, I feel offended and uncomfortable. This may be all you need to do. Sometimes people are just not aware of their impact on you. Use calm, objective language that avoids personal attacks. Don't volunteer speculation about the other's motives, because that will just lead to more misunderstanding. The subject of the conversation is how the other person has made you feel, so state your feelings as directly as you can. This is where I statements come in. When your stereo is loud, I can't get my work done. I get worried that I can't meet my deadline. When you make dirty jokes in the office, I feel uncomfortable, and I shouldn't have to feel this way at the place where I work every day. Not, maybe I'm silly, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I know you don't mean to offend. Don't apologize for your feelings, but stick to the subject. The other person is not responsible for the way you feel, yet he needs to know about his impact on you. If you don't state your feelings, you're assuming that the other person can read your mind. Your automatic self, dominated by unconscious feelings, will affect your body language and may make you seem meek or apologetic, or threatening and dangerous. So rehearse assertive nonverbal communication until it comes naturally to you. Maintain eye contact. Keep your body erect. Speak in a firm but controlled tone. Tell the other person what you want. Use simple, direct language. Keep it specific. I want you to turn the stereo down. Not, I want you to show more consideration for me. I want you to stop the dirty jokes. Not, I'd like you to show more respect. If the conversation goes well, you may be able to address the broader issues at a later time. For now, focus on the other person's specific behavior, not his personality or character, to avoid putting him on the defensive. You also should describe the consequences. Clearly spell out what will happen if the other person does or doesn't cooperate. This should not be a threat, but a natural consequence. If I can get my work done, we can go out later. When you're dealing with someone you know to be uncooperative, you may point out the natural consequences of his refusal. If you don't let me get my work done, we won't have enough money to buy the things you want. Or, if you don't stop the dirty jokes, I'll have to speak to the manager. Be ready to negotiate. Ask the other person if he has alternative solutions to the problem. Be ready to give something up in order to get what you want. Often the other person needs a way out that will let you win the argument without making him feel humiliated, and you should consider compromises. Listen carefully to the response. You may be wrong. You may have misinterpreted the other person's behavior or motives. If you're wrong, be prepared to apologize. Then make this a learning experience for yourself. Why did you jump to the wrong conclusion? Good communication is not just about speaking clearly, but also about listening carefully. If you don't get a clarification or an apology, listen for a defensive response. You don't understand. Those aren't really dirty jokes. You've got some nerve. This means your message is not getting through. If you're not getting through, just repeat. Don't get distracted. Be mindful of what your goals are and ignore diversions, like attempts to change the subject or shift the blame or personal attacks. Stick to the issue. You may have to repeat yourself several times before the other person sees that defenses aren't going to work. If you're not getting anywhere, leave the problem in the other person's lap. I can't change my position. Take some time to think about this and get back to me. He may be so surprised or defensive in the moment that he can't think clearly, but will come up with a solution if you let him simmer for a while. If you do get through to the other person, as you usually will, be gracious. Express appreciation simply and directly. Remember that he needs to protect his self-esteem. If he's agreed to change, then you can listen to defensive explanations. Don't allow yourself to get drawn into a long-winded discussion that may undo some of the good you've done, but allow him to save face if necessary. Chapter 5. Because you're special. In this scenario, both the automatic self and the conscious self have developed the same delusion from life experience. The belief that you are special somehow and the usual rules don't apply. Of course, most of us have some belief in our own uniqueness, but it gets us in trouble if taken too far. The paradigm can be solid. I deserve to be treated better than other people, but fragile at the same time. So it usually takes a crisis of some kind for people like this to realize that something isn't working. Some such people in crisis, for instance, when they are denied something important like a promotion, will just strengthen their defenses and rationalize the disappointment away. Others, more vulnerable and more treatable, will collapse into depression as their false front is broken, and may begin to question their basic assumptions. In this chapter, we'll discuss how feeling special, better than others, entitled to better treatment, whether from plain old narcissism or other causes, leads to self-destructive behavior. There are many cases in the public eye that show the self-destructive consequences of acting on feelings of entitlement. John Edwards, Mark Sanford, Bill Clinton, Tiger Woods, Elliot Spitzer, Anthony Weiner, and other men whose fame and power made them believe they were entitled to philander. Far too many celebrities who overdosed, Dylan Thomas, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis, John Belushi, Michael Jackson, who felt entitled to excess or a special high and were surrounded by sycophants who wouldn't tell them to stop. Women, from Marilyn Monroe to Janis Joplin, who had been abused and sought relief through excess. Hubris, people elevated above their station without the psychological preparation necessary, like many adolescent pop stars or college athletes who find themselves in deep trouble, is such a common phenomenon that someone has published a pop-up book of celebrity meltdowns. But getting in trouble because you feel special is in no way confined to celebrities. It's the stuck-up girls in high school, the condescending office mate, the husband who thinks he's smarter than his wife, the guy on disability who's made a hobby out of holding grudges, the mom who pushes her kids constantly, the aloof intellectual who reaches 60 and realizes he hasn't got a friend in the world. All of them are likely to suffer for their actions at some point. Psychiatry categorizes certain syndromes as personality disorders rather than symptom-based disorders. In symptom-based disorders, like depression, anxiety, or obsessive-compulsive disorder, the individual is in subjective distress, and the pain is experienced as something foreign to the self. I don't know why I feel so awful. Do this thing. In personality disorders, it is a rigid, repeated pattern of behavior conflicting with social norms that leads to distress or to trouble functioning in relationships, employment, and the world at large. Common personality disorders are paranoid personality, schizoid, withdrawn personality, and antisocial personality disorder. In my terms, personality disorders are characterized by self-defeating paradigms and assumptions that in turn result in stereotyped behaviors, which lead to conflict with the world. And then there is a whole set of defenses to blame everything but oneself for the conflict. If this sounds like a closed loop, it is. It's difficult for people who feel special to realize that they have to change if they want to get along with the world. Instead, if they're not successful at getting special treatment, they often have a deep sense of being misunderstood and aggrieved.